In the England of my youth, the white middle class were a different breed altogether from the entitlement oozing, virtue signalling creatures we see today. Back in the day, the middle class was the backbone of Britain, not its bane. The middle class of England used to be something to look up to. They were the teachers, the accountants, the sales directors, and the engineers. They lived in semi-detached houses with immaculate rose bushes. They drove privately owned Rover 400s, not tax break Teslas. They sent their kids to local schools, not to private institutions, where the curriculum is more about social justice than arithmetic. They attended church twice a year. They were the ones who valued hard work, the local community, and yes, even a bit of stiff upper lip stoicism. They understood that life isn't about having everything handed to you on a silver platter. But let's fast forward to 2015, when the world seemed to go mad. The Brexit vote was the tipping point, wasn't it? Suddenly the middle class, now thoroughly gentrified and somewhat detached from the realities of the working class, were horrified that the working class plebs had a say in their own future. How dare we interfere with their cheap foreign holidays to the Algarve, their imported bottles of wine and their supply of migrant labour to tend their gardens and decorate their buy-to-let portfolio. And the middle-class men were terrified that the cute Polish girl from the local coffee shop that they fantasize over would end up going back home without participating in the romantic fantasy they conducted in their minds. Thus began the great middle-class tantrum, where every referendum, every vote became an opportunity for them to protest, to demand a redo, to demand a recount. Because in the here and now, democracy only counts when it aligns with their middle-class worldview. The middle class were once content with their skiing holidays and their evenings drinking bottles of Chateau Mouton. But as the organised globalist engineered winds of change swept through the land, they found a new pastime. With the zeal of converts, they took up the baton of the globalist elites and the mainstream media, repeating their mantras like parrots in a cage. They transformed themselves into social justice warriors, a new breed of moral crusader, armed not with just buy-to-let properties and entitlement, but with hashtags and slogans. Then we saw the middle class transform into warriors of virtue. They took up the causes of climate change activism, Black Lives Matter, and replacement migration as a hobby in virtue signalling. They drive to Waitrose in Teslas and hybrid BMWs, as if driving away from their carbon guilt that they don't actually possess. They flexed on LinkedIn with black squares and slogans during the BLM movements, not missing a chance to demonstrate their solidarity from the comfort of their well-appointed commuter belt homes. And on the matter of replacement migration, they express a liberal tolerance, welcoming diversity so long as it's curated to fit into their cultural narrative and not on their doorstep. It's all part of a cultural performance where the applause is measured not in deeds but in likes, shares, and the occasional pat on the back at the golf club or to the yoga classes. So it was inevitable that the middle-class children would also follow their parents' lead. These are the offspring of privilege, indoctrinated since birth with the latest eco-dogma. They've got the audacity to block roads, delay ambulances, and even attack art, all in the name of their luxury beliefs. And now they have moved into the era of Palestine solidarity. Here's a group with pink hair, largely clueless about Middle Eastern geopolitics, chanting slogans they don't understand. They're the ones who'll lecture you on fascism, while standing next to groups chanting for another nation's destruction. The irony would be hilarious if it wasn't so tragic. Back to the parents. They did actually embrace a new culture, the work-from-home culture, a relic of the lockdowns that these modern middles refuse to give up. They've got their ergonomic chairs and their Zoom meetings, but heaven forbid they be asked to commute like the rest of us. Meanwhile, they're more concerned with pronouns than productivity, more focused on workshops about inclusivity than actual work. The commonality among all these issues is an absolute intolerance for any view that doesn't mirror theirs. They claim to fight for democracy while arguing that voting the wrong way is undemocratic. They want to silence Tommy Robinson, control our borders only when it suits their narrative, and they've turned our institutions into echo chambers of their own self-righteous drivel. These are the new cultural elites who tell us our countryside is racist, our history needs deconstructing, and being white is now a sin, even though they are as white as pure-driven snow themselves. They're driven by narcissism, self-interest, and a peculiar kind of class hatred that only the truly privileged can muster. The irony is that the middles cannot see that the globalists, with their high-minded schemes and their desire for homogenization, seem hell-bent on erasing them, the middle class, the very class that once epitomized the British spirit of self-sufficiency and stiff upper-lipped resilience. The middles are too blind and too indoctrinated to see that they have been unwittingly turned into the most eloquent propagandists for their own destruction. Indoctrinated through the drip, drip, drip of mainstream media, education, and social media, they recite the mantras of diversity, sustainability, and global unity with the fervour of converts, oblivious to the fact that with each chant they are soaring off the branch upon which they sit. They do not realise that they are headed for a fall. They cannot see that they are drinking the globalist Kool-Aid. England has never faced such a cunning, insidious enemy as globalism. Globalism parades as the defender of peace and tolerance, but is, in reality, a hateful, intolerant mob with a god complex. They'll destroy everything that makes England function, if we let them. From our electricity to our food supply. They've already caused more damage than the Luftwaffe with their ideological bombs. And globalism's biggest collaborator? The middle class.